IVM.
The journeys of successful and multifaceted entrepreneurs can teach us many things, from how they build their business, balance their many interests, as well as imbibe the right mindset. One entrepreneur who I've always admired is Saransh Goila, not just for his journey and his ability to juggle many hats as a chef, entrepreneur, and content creator, but also because he has a way of looking at the world and evolving with it that we can all learn from and use in our own lives and careers. I'm Varun Duggirala, and this is Acing is Dead. Right back with Saransh Goila.
Going for parties is just so frustrating these days. I mean, your mom will make it a point to come and tell you how her friend's son has secured a house for her, and your wife will also find out that her sister's husband is taking her on a foreign holiday, while you're wondering why you're the only one who doesn't have a plan for the damn future. That's why I never sleep well during the festive time. Unless... www.hdfclife.com. Select. Done. You know what? I think I'll sleep rather well after all. Live calm. With HDFC Life, click to protect life. The Income Plus option offers life cover and steady income stream, so you're always ready for any expenses that life throws at you. Basically, this plan lets you plan your expenses like you plan your vacations. It's that simple. Visit hdfclife.com to know more and for terms and conditions.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. Saransh, we're finally doing this. We've been talking about doing this on and off, I think, for a while. We are finally doing this, and we are doing this with you wearing very cool merch, which makes me think what I should wear my merch.
First of all, Varun, feeling very, very good that finally we are being able to do this. It would have been nicer if you were sitting together and eating together and having this chat together, but this is also cool. So absolute pleasure and glad that I'm here finally.
Yeah, and you've had. I'm not sure how busy the last couple of last week or so has been. Obviously, everyone who has eaten the butter chicken and everything else that's come out of all your outlets is one end. But now you've taken an entire new journey with. First of all, why is it called Bambai Meal Rolls? Why the name?
I think the right answer for that is, I like to do things direct, which means my first venture was called Goila Butter Chicken. So the name sort of says it all, right? That it is a butter chicken brand. If you come to us, you will eat a butter chicken. And I think for the same reason, we wanted to call it Bambai Meal Rolls. So Meal Rolls in itself is going to be a category, according to me at least. That's how I foresee it. Why do we call it Bambai Meal Rolls? Because I knew that anything with Bombay, I'll not get trademarks. So, because Bombay is licensed a fair bit, especially in the food category as well. It's always a fight with the trademark. So I thought, let's find a word that reminds people of Bombay, but it's still not Bombay and it's not Mumbai. So that was Bambai. And it is sort of also in a way dates back to old flavors that Bombay likes, classic. No matter where you come from in India, you get your culture and your cuisine to this city. And that is what sort of Bombay represents on the brand. And hence Bambai Meal Roll.
When I look at all the food that you worked on building out across, I would say across different menus, across what you even put out across, in your social media, there's an innate almost throwback saying this is stuff which you've had for a long time. This is what you can do, or this is what you can eat. It's never, you're not trying to reinvent. You're trying to say this is so innately our flavor. So I want to ask you that, where did this start off for you? Where is this, if you had to pick a point where the love for what is essentially Indian flavors which you've had for a long time, where did that kind of kick off for you?
I would say that, as a chef who's sort of trained and graduated with Indian food in the last 15 years or so, I think my expertise lies in that domain, of course, and you want to always be close to your expertise. It becomes your immediate sort of USP that, I understand this cuisine more than anyone else does in the world. So that is one. I think the other is, the food that we grow up with and the food that we connect with will always be, it will always have that memory. You might have forgotten how you liked that hero. It's like that scene from Ratatouille, where that food critic, when he finally has that ratatouille and he gets transported to his village where his mom used to cook that ratatouille for him. And I think all of us are sort of transcribed or sort of ingrained with that mental note that we are going to like certain flavors when they are served to us in a certain format. I think as a chef, it's cool to sort of experiment with those flavors. I think that's the new Indian wave of or trend that I'm seeing across the globe, which is raw and rustic. So Indian food presented the way it should be, not restaurant style Indian food or modern Indian food, but it's just Indian food for what it is. I think the whole evolution of our food is that we are used to our kind of food. कि मुझे अपने घर का खाना मालूम है, सिंधी खाना, बनिया खाना, मारवाड़ी खाना. But then as soon as I go to try another cuisine within India, I will get some random version of it because as chefs and as creators, we try to give our own spins to everything possible. And I think evolution for Indian food happened very differently. It should have been always looking inside versus looking outside, but we of course chose the route outside. I think now we live in a great time where you can serve classic flavors, stick to recipes that we know of. Yes, and of course, serve them in a format that suits the younger generation, to say so. So you have to be, of course, you have to keep in mind that people don't have time, they need convenience, and the fact that they are all eating a lot from outside. So how do you provide them a meal that's hygienic, nutritious, and clean at the same time? So I think that is the real challenge we must now take on as chefs for sure.
When I saw the gongura in the meal rolls menu, right? What you just said is a throwback for me, because whenever someone talks about Andhra cuisine, they tend to talk about biryani, which is technically not Andhra cuisine, and they keep saying biryani, and I'm like, that's not what. But gongura is so innately what, like I as a kid have just like OD'd on gongura, and even now I wait for like batches to come from back home. So I agree with what you're saying, is that you honestly want stuff which is so innately reminds us of childhood, reminds us of what flavors we really like, and kind of building on top of that to make it more modern in terms of packaging, etc., and all that stuff. When you look at both your brands now, if I can call them that, how did you kind of start off? Let's say, what have you learned from building Goila's butter chicken that you've used in what you're now trying to build out with meal rolls? Because when you started off that, you didn't have your own,
Correct.
You didn't have your own space. And so what have you kind of learned that you're using in this one?
I think what I've like the one thing that I've learned, and I feel like it will always be, it's like a sure shot sort of dart to throw on the board and say, you know what, this will always hit the market, is that you're focused. And I think that is one thing I've learned with GBC, Goila Butter Chicken, that once you're focused on a particular format or style of food, in this case, it happens to be just one dish that we focused on, I think you're going to create a brand that will have a longer shelf life. What typically happens with restaurants in today's day and age is, earlier the shelf life of a particular brand used to be 8 to 10 years. Ki, 10 saal mein, it gets too old, you need to rebrand, you need to sort of evolve, you need to change direction or vision for your company. Now it's reduced down to 3 or 5 years. So it is very, very tough for restaurant brands to succeed beyond 5 years. And bars, to 2 to 3 years, they get the same bar myself. So for food to have recall, I have realized that focus is key. You have to be fixated on that one product that you are good at, especially in the quick service restaurant segment. There's a reason, like big chains like Starbucks and Domino's and McDonald's, all are like legendary, iconic brands because they are fixated on one product. One serves pizza, one serves burger, and then they are focused. And I think GBC did the same for us. We said our focus is curries and especially butter chicken, because that is going to be anyway the 80% inventory of our products that we'll sell. 80% will always be butter chicken out of that. If I sold 100% curries, and as a use case in the last 5 years, we were able to observe that we are called Goila Butter Chicken. 85% of revenue comes from just butter chicken and its derivatives. Whether it's butter chicken is butter chicken biryani or a butter chicken roll, which is your favorite.
Yes.
So no matter which product I pick onto in my menu, it will always be just selling butter chicken. So we used a similar template to launch the new brand as well, which means meal rolls is now our template. So whenever you come to a menu, you know you're coming to eat a meal in a roll. So you've already made up your mind that I'm here to have a filling, satisfying Indian lunch. So we've already taken that confusion out of a menu that, oh, we also do pizza and we also do burger and we also do like salad. No, we don't do any of that. When you go to a menu, it's very, very tight. It's like 9 different flavors that you can pick from, and that's about it. I think what it does is it helps you to be consistent and be more permanent, because consistency is another issue that kitchens typically face. When you have 50 dishes, 100 dishes, of course, every third dish or fourth dish will be inconsistent. Today it might be excellent. Tomorrow you'll be like, "Arey, I'm never ordering from this restaurant again." So I think a big part of sort of sorting that challenge is to keep your menu tight and short.
No, I want to go back to where this all started from, right? I mean, I know you've been asked this question a million times, just talking about your journey, but I find it really interesting that the journey you had from, the TV cooking contest to traveling the country and sampling food. So, but I actually want to go a little before this thing. Where did your love for food really start? Where did that kind of, if you had to kind of go to that point?
Varun, I come from a very like sort of North Indian, typical Delhi family. When I was growing up, we were sort of lower middle class, aspiring to be middle class sort of a category. And we would not have enough money or budget to sort of, travel a lot or to see the world or to do a lot of fun things that require a lot of money. So our fun things would typically boil down to eating out. And what we would do is every weekend, my grandfather and my father would sort of roam around the city to check out what are the new places open. It's like sort of what Rocky and Mayur did for a whole decade. Is I think every family has those two people or one person who will sort of drive down no matter where you have to go for food. So I think my dad was in the same sort of category, and I think that is where I pick it from, because I grew up in a cultural household where food was very, very relevant to celebrate, for weekends, to have fun. Entertainment meant food. Me and my grandparents would sit together and watch Chef Sanjeev Kapoor's food shows. And for us, that was that 1 hour of, oh my God, so much fun. Let's see what new recipe is today coming up. So I think it sort of got ingrained from that time. And my grandfather used to cook a lot as well. So as a kid, I would like to help him in the kitchen, assist him every Sunday to whatever he was making. And when I was 13 or 14, I started to experiment a lot myself, which meant like kids these days so are way ahead. At 8-year-olds, moms are like, "Arey, chalo sikha do." At that time, I think this is 90s, it was unusual to see a boy, 13, 14-year-old cooking in the kitchen. So I would find a lot of joy in doing so. And the other was I was catching eyeballs. So in the family, suddenly they're like, "Arey, Goila ji ka beta khana banata hai," and like he makes parathas. And then aunties would like come and they'll like check it out. Like, can this boy actually roll a roti out? And like it became a thing. So I started enjoying the attention. As a kid as well. I think as a kid, if you are good at something and people are giving you like fuel, you're like, so let's do more of this. So I think that's how it all started. And after I graduated college, my parents wanted me to be a biotechnologist, but I wanted to be an actor. And my grandfather thought I would make a solid chef. So the house
he was right.
He was, I guess he was right. So the house was fairly divided. And actors, everybody said no to, and they're like, "Jaake shakal dekho aine mein," sort of a situation. And I used to be heavy. I used to eat a lot, and I used to cook a lot. So I was like 96 kgs, 95 kgs back then. And biotechnology, I failed all my entrance exams. I didn't pass a single one. And hotel management, I cleared all my exams. So like the top colleges, I sort of got I could have gone to any school in India, basically. So because my interviews were very nice, I already knew about a lot of things that they were talking about. So yeah, that led me to IHM in Aurangabad. I That is a Taj Group of Hotels Institute, and I studied there for 3 years. And they do a culinary course, so I typically joined there to become a chef. And when I graduated in 2008, my first job was at the Leela in Bangalore. And in my first job, I realized that this is not cut out for me, because 2 years of working at the Leela, I learned a lot. I can't take away from the fact that all my technicality of being a chef comes from my first job and from my course. But I realized they're going to put me into a box, make the same kebabs every day, make the same dal every day, make the same butter chicken every day. And I realized, but I am so young. Like, I'm 22 years old, and I want to cook so many other things. And I quit my job after 2 years. I landed in Mumbai. This time I told my dad, you do not stop me from doing the things that I'm doing. He said, no problem. Now you are on your own, figure your life out. And I did an acting course in Mumbai for about 6 months, which was, nobody understood it back then. And then it was weird, because everybody's like, didn't he just do a chef course? Why is he doing a course on acting? And I think in my mind, I was looking at it from a very different perspective. I wanted to be a food content creator, even back then, which was 2011 is when I did this course. And I was very, very clear that, I want to combine these two worlds that I feel should be together, which is films and food, to sort of together. And after I did that course, I started knocking on several doors. At that time, NDTV Good Times was a popular channel. Food was just launching as a TV channel as well. It was Chef Sanjeev Kapoor's brainchild. Then there was Discovery Travel and Living. There was Fox. So there were a few lifestyle sort of channels that were really thriving and doing well. And it was like the new bouquet of channels suddenly, apart from Star Plus and Colors and Sony. You had all these lifestyle channels. And despite, of course, knocking on several doors, I was not able to find any break. That is when this reality show sort of came to save me, is how I think of it. Because I had already given up. I had done my acting course, struggled for a year in Bombay. My dad said, "Abhi ho gaya na, matlab now you come back." And I'd gone back to Delhi by the end of the year. And then I found this show. There were auditions for Maha Challenge, which was like pitted as like the Indian version of MasterChef, slightly different in format. But Chef Sanjeev was hosting it. It was Madhuri Dixit's comeback show. And I was like, you know what? If nothing else is working, I might as well be on a reality show to see if it works out for me. So I auditioned for it. They really liked my profile. They're like, "Arey, young chef who also knows how to act and all. Perfect. Let's take him on."
You have the layers of every reality show's casting department.
So casting like, "Acha, theek thaak dikhta hai," and then now I know how casting departments work. So I was like one of the contestants on the show. I was shortlisted very, very quickly, and then I went on to win the show. And then that was incredible, because it was Chef Sanjeev who sort of was taking calls on who should be like going to the next round. They of course had 2 or 3 other judges as well, but I'm assuming he was like the main sort of person taking care of this. So I realized that I was able to showcase who I am as a talent and as a chef very, very clearly on the show. Like the reason that I won was I was not afraid of showcasing my creativity as a chef. And I think that sort of put me onto a solid path, so 2012, I won this show, and it sort of set me onto this journey where I moved back to Mumbai. I was offered a job at Food Channel as a food editor. However, I was like a food content creator. Like in today's tonality, that is exactly what my role was. I was creating content for the channel from 2012 to 15. And in that interim, I did several food shows. Like I did a travel show, which I got popular for, which was 100 days of travel, where I got to travel 20,000 kilometers, 60 cities, 25 states, all by road in like one insane road trip, where I had lost like all my hair and I had sort of changed the skin tone And I was like a different person after that road trip altogether. And I was also a different chef because I really tasted blood. I realized that, oh my God, I only know this much about Indian food, and there is so much out there. And I realized that I could probably do like hundreds of these trips and I will still not learn everything about our food. So that sort of changed my perception about what I wanted to do when I was 24 and I found this opportunity. All I wanted to do was be popular. Like the most proud acclaim for me was celebrity chef. That's really what I wanted to be in my 20s, especially
Yeah.
early 20s. Only when I did this travel show, I realized that, like standing in the studio and doing recipe shows is also not my thing. Suddenly I was like, Arey, this is my dream, and suddenly it feels like this is not it because I've
Yeah.
seen the other side.
You want to be on the road. You want to see the flavors and everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, so then I quickly started shifting my focus from being a TV chef to being a chef who travels and who researches and who shows something new to people, either on his shows or on Facebook. At that time, Facebook had started to pick up. Twitter and Facebook were at their peak in
Yeah.
2014, 15 sort of timeline. 2015, I quit food because I realized that I was social media had really blown up. I realized that, what, this might be the right time for me to build my own world on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. And in those 3-4 years of doing TV shows on the side, I used to do a lot of pop-ups as a chef, and as in just to keep my sort of chef sort of skill side alive. So I used to do these pop-ups where butter chicken, for some reason, really, really started to stand out because it was my own take on the classic butter chicken. And I was feeding them food from like Nagaland and like from Meghalaya and from Rajasthan, and like all sort of different parts of India. But what was standing out in those pop-ups was the butter chicken. As in, it's just one of those things, it's comforting and it's
Was that
safe.
your moment of saying, okay, I want to be an Because I find it interesting to ask anyone who becomes an entrepreneur, saying at which point, what was that moment when you said that, oh, this is something which I really want to do, or was that always a plan that was kind of developing over time, or did you say once again,
Um,
this is what I want to do?
Honestly, not really. It was not like a plan that was harboring in my mind for a while. So in 2014, I had asked Food for a raise, and they told me no. And then I worked there for another year, and I asked them for another raise, and they said no. And I realized that because they are experts in this domain, right? And they have taught me everything that I know. So for me to be able to push boundaries for myself within the network, it's going to become very, very difficult because it already has a network hero, which is Chef Sanjeev himself. So he's created these multiple stars. However, if I have to build a universe like he has built for himself, I must sort of branch out. And 2015, I sort of took that call of branching out from food. And one of the things that I really wanted to do when I branched out was to have my own restaurant. And I used to always think, but how will I juggle both these things together? How will I be a chef in a restaurant, and how will I also be a chef on TV or as a content creator? So I realized that if I started out a venture which only required my recipes versus my physical time all the time, I would be probably technically might be able to do both, or I could juggle. And that's why I decided to start a quick service restaurant or a cloud kitchen/cloud kitchen, which was Goila Butter Chicken. It is then when I actually realized that, I used to do it as a pop-up. The demand for the product was huge. Like, I was flooded with requests on Twitter all the time. And it was a hashtag before it became a brand. So there is that. And hashtag was made by a few of my best friends in Mumbai, Anish, and he's the founder of Swami Drinks now. So all these food people used to come to my pop-ups, and they actually created this hashtag. Hey, Delhi boy, let's use his last name, Goila, and let's call it Goila Butter Chicken. So it was not even my creation. I think it found its place in the digital universe very solidly. So I think it was a byproduct of Twitter and Facebook, honestly, because my pop-ups led to a lot of sort of attention on social media where people were sharing pictures, they were sharing feedback. Oh my God, we tried this butter chicken. and you should also try it, but there was no restaurant in place. So I think I created the demand for it before I started my venture. So I still remember the day we launched. From that day to sort of the 100th day of GBC, we were sold out every night for the first 100 days. And I think the reason for that was because a lot of audience and brand building had been done even pre-launching GBC as a solo venture.
Yeah.
So I think I had laid down seeds when I was working at Food, but it sort of came to fruit when I left the channel, and I was like, ab to kuch karna hi padega anyway, because I'm not getting a salary from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that sort of pushed me to start it quickly.
You make a few interesting points, which I feel anybody can kind of take learning from, right? One is the fact that you build almost a brand name out before you built the product out, in terms of like just building the restaurant or the cloud kitchen. And you also, I would say, one of the earliest cloud kitchens, if I remember right, because
yes, we were sort of ahead on the cloud kitchen story, as in before it blew up and Rebel kitchens and everybody like raised a lot of money on that. So and then though the intent was not, as I said, from the perspective that cloud kitchen is going to be the future, but
it just made
for
sense.
me it was reversed. It made sense.
Yeah.
And then we just fit into it at the right, it was like right place at the right time.
And I think what's also interesting is, and I remember very, very early on when you launched it as well, right? You didn't try to have, even now, like the menu is quite compact, but I remember then it was a supremely compact menu. There were just a few
really
things I don't think I needed to scroll when I would look at it. And now obviously there are more options, then it's kind of grown over time. But I remember looking at the first time saying, this makes sense, because this is a lot of the stuff which I would automatically order when I didn't have to scroll, I didn't have to choose, but I would, and instantly I've actually tried everything on the menu, so I shouldn't go.
Oh wow!
So I'm not going to get into which one is my favorite or anything else. But I think that was the interesting part, is that you suddenly had something in order which was simple. It wasn't trying to tell you that you had to read ingredients and figure out what was there, and it tasted really good. So I think the mixture of building the brand out and then having something very simple that people could order, I think is a great learning for anyone kind of starting off, because I think people try to start off with a lot more complex sorts.
One classic example for this, and this has been happening for ages, right? Like as I told you, I come from North Delhi, from a place called Pitampura. So there, this tikki wala, he used to sell his tikkis on that cycle, that proper street food wala cycle.
Correct.
Bhaiya selling you tikki. So his shop was called Bittu Tikki Wala, his cycle. And he used to put a little small placard selling these tikkis. He would add 4 pieces of paneer on the top of the tikki.
Okay.
So he became popular. Arey, wo apni tikki ke upar paneer dalta hai. So his USP was a tikki with fresh pieces of paneer on the top. Because suddenly with aloo, you're getting paneer. And that sort of became his USP. He started the cycle. Suddenly it graduated into a shop. Then one day he bought a home next to us, and he like graduated. That's my dad's version of the story. He bought a Honda City for himself. Then in 7 years, Bittu Tikki Wala had 8 stores in Pitampura, and he had become BTW from Bittu Tikki Wala. And now he had a nice swanky BMW that he would roam around it. And so very, very soon BTW, since after he became BTW, now he had 50 stores all across Delhi. So he became like the iconic brand who started from a cycle and graduated to becoming BTW with like multiple stores in the same city. And I think the formula for success there is also that he first created his audience on a cycle by putting those 4 pieces of paneer. He sort of enticed them into his venture. He became a brand because they started to associate him with that one particular kind of tikki, which only he would give. And I think rest, of course, is history. So I think that formula of being, consistent and focused with your product. And of course, your USP has to be, like we do a smoky butter chicken. That's our USP.
Yeah.
Every time you open the box, you will get a whiff of tandoor on your nose. And that is what the Goila sort of promise is. So I think for me, that story really stands out always. I always cite his example because I think I followed the same thing, where we are very, very focused and very fixated on that one thing that we want to do properly.
I have a bunch more questions to ask you, but I've just been reminded that I need to go in for a break. So quickly take a break and we'll be right back with advertising instead.
A wise man once said, traveling, it makes you speechless, then turns you into a storyteller.
Well, listen to such travel stories and experiences exploring India on the Musafir Stories with us, Saif and Faiza.
Catch us on the IVM website, app, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. You in our chat before this break, I have already gotten hungry. I have a salivating mouth. You've spoken a lot about food, which I think I'm basically continue to talk a lot about food. But I actually want to ask you this: is that as an entrepreneur, what have you learned about yourself, and also what have you discovered over time, and what have you kind of like added as your skill sets?
I think one thing that I've learned is I used to sort of micromanage, and I have realized that to build anything successful in life, you need a solid team and you need people who sort of believe in your vision and who can execute with the same intensity as you do. But nothing happens alone, and I think no long-lasting product or brand was built by one person. So I think that's been my greatest learning. When I started the venture, I used to try and hold everything under my control. It took me some time to sort of give control away to other people who started working for Goila Butter Chicken. I have a co-founder as well. His name is Vivek. So I also realized that we need to. As in, I would be like, नहीं मुझे finance भी देखना है, मुझे purchase भी देखना है, मुझे recipe भी देखना है. I want to also see, what is the rota of schedule for duties, etc. So I used to sort of try and dip my fingers in each and every sort of domain of the restaurant, and that was not working out very well for us. It's only when I realized that, with sort of the Spider-Man thing, that you have to be responsible, and if you're going to grow, you will have to sort of trust people. You will have to be responsible for these people at the same time. So it took me some time to sort of go through that process. It is tough because you can only learn this while you are running a venture. And the scaling challenge, so nobody can teach you only. When you have one store and suddenly you want to open 10 stores, 100 people will tell you and give you advice. No, do this, do that. But you will end up doing what you want to do with your brand, and then you learn it the hard way. So we learned few things, of course, the hard way, because with food scaling up is very, very tricky. If you have one store, you can sort of manage it. You can go every day, pay attention to it. You can do a taste check, quality check, etc. But how do you do that for 100 stores, or how do you do it for 10 stores also? I think we spent a good 2 or 3 years learning that, and that process takes time because it also helps you figure out where do you stand in this universe as an entrepreneur. Also, what is your aspiration? As in, is it just to build a brand? Is it to make a lot of money? Is it to just achieve scale and be all across the world? So I think that is what I've learned. I've become a more sort of a person who thinks ahead of time, sort of a thing. Earlier, I used to be like, we will see how it comes and goes, and then like, oh, abhi Ganpati aa gaya, no sale, shit. Next 3 months are dropped. Okay. So I think we've learned that you have to sort of always plan ahead of time, and I think that has been my first learning of being an entrepreneur. That see 5 years down the line, and that's something I never used to do earlier. So, and of course, risk-taking appetite has increased over the years because you realize that you know the rules of the game. You know that if you fail here, how will you sort of push back and still sort of come back at it? So I think that has, of course, helped. But I think one thing that's very dear to me as an entrepreneur is that I don't hold back on my creativity, despite, even if business poses certain challenge to me, that you can't have more than 5 dishes on your menu because it becomes a problem, then we will do the other 5 dishes for 3 months a year, or we will showcase it at festivals, or we will do something around it to keep the brand and the integrity alive. But yeah, I think the biggest learning is to sort of delegate work to other people and trust people in your company.
And I mean, look at the fact that you balance, on one end you're an entrepreneur, other end you're chef, you're also a content creator. How do you find a way to balance all three? Because I think that today you see more and more people doing multiple things like you do. How do you find balance? How do you And also it comes with the fact that, you will have each community, and I remember reading something that you wrote about saying each community is saying, oh, you're not fully into that, you're into other things. So how do you deal with that as well?
I think it's a nightmare, honestly. I like.
I'm glad somebody said it. I'm glad somebody said it.
Like every time my sister asks me, "Acha," no, she used to be an animator, and she worked for freelancer a few years with Glitch as well. And
I remember that. She and I have spoken in the past.
So she quit her whole career, went on to become a baker. And I asked her, "What are you doing? And how are you doing like so many multiple things in one point?" She said, "You to cannot say only." And I said, "Yeah, that is really rich of me to tell someone that don't do multiple things." As in, I think it's absolutely tough because as humans we are greedy, and I think for me it's pure greed. कि मुझे सब कुछ करना है. I want to have my own restaurant. I want to have my own equipment line. I want to have my own show. I also want to have my own masala brand. Like I am like if there was a greed chart, I would be on the top of that chart for sure.
Yeah.
So I want everything. And I think that comes at a price. And the price that you pay is that I already think of retiring when I'm 40. Because it creates a lot of burden, a lot of instability in your life, especially mentally and physically. Also, when you are like in your 20s and when you're in your 30s, it's two different things because physically you become slightly more slower. You want to give time to your own self. You have a family. So your priorities also start to change. So I think I was able to juggle it very beautifully in my life from 25 to 30 because I was living by myself in Bombay, really like struggling to prove a point, and I would spend 18 hours a day, 9 hours to my restaurant, 9 hours to my creator journey. So I was literally burning the midnight oil to get both these things up and running together in the last 5 years, and now I'm 35. So from 30 to 35, I have really struggled to sort of juggle these two different careers together, and they are entirely different. I don't want any chef or food person listening to confuse themselves. If you are running a restaurant, it's a full-time job. If you're being a food creator, it's a full-time job, which means that the only way you can run both is then you are only giving 50% of yourself to each. If you do 4 things, you're only giving 25% of yourself to each, which means the 75% that you're not there needs to be somebody else who's covering or stepping into your shoes and making it happen for you. So I think for GBC, I had a solid partner, co-founder Vivek, who believes in it as much as I do. Without him, this brand would be a fail because he's the operational, he spearheads all the operations. He takes care of the brand full time. I give it 50% of my time because I need to do shows because they also add revenue back to the brand and they keep the brand popular. It's a circle. But for him, it's 100% of his time that goes into the brand. As in, people might think that it's Goila Butter Chicken is Saransh Goila, but Goila Butter Chicken, if you ask me, I would say it's Vivek Sahan because it's his time and his baby more than it is mine also. Like if tomorrow I had to part ways with the brand, he would be the one crying more versus me, because I think it's been built on a certain name and a certain brand, but ultimately it's the people who run it, right? And so that helps me to sort of maneuver and do other things on the side. So because Vivek takes full accountability and responsibility for Goila Butter Chicken, that gives me some time to do my shows. I've been able to build a nice team who helps me with my content as well, whether it's planning content, cycle, calendar, brainstorming with me on recipes, on ideas, on executing things. I think it requires hands and it requires people. But yeah, I would say that when you start out as a talent, like when I started out, I was only a content creator for 5 years. Then I ventured out into a restaurant. And then I, of course, had to juggle both these things together. So I think starting out from one focused place would always be my suggestion to anyone. You build yourself, like let's say if I was a restaurant chef, I would build myself as a star restaurant, as a restaurant chef for 5 years, and then graduated to do TV shows or to do content on Instagram or YouTube. But you have to prove yourself in one that successful venture, whatever that is. And I think that gives you arms and legs to do more things.
You mentioned greed a little earlier, but at some point, what you also done, I think, especially over the last couple of years, also been figure ways to kind of give back, right? I mean, if you look at COVID meals for India, I think that's one initiative which you kind of really push through, is to kind of get people home cooked food while you were all stuck at home in different ways. I'd love to kind of talk about that, because I think that also kind of shows that it doesn't mean that, if you have multiple interests, doesn't mean you kind of not working to kind of give back. In many ways, this was giving back. So how did that kind of start off, and also, like, where was your headspace at, especially when COVID hit, because the hospitality industry was one of the most
Yeah.
hit in that sense. So how did that whole period kind of work for you?
First of all, it was an absolutely terrible time for like the hospitality industry overall. Like restaurants suffered and how. So like we took multiple loans to support our staff, to sort of keep the shops running. Few stores also shut in the process of COVID. So like COVID casualty. We couldn't do much about it. So I think it was anyway a very tough time for everyone. But in the second wave, which was April 2021, which hit sort of hardest because number of deaths and number of people getting COVID was just
Too high,
insanely high, and nobody knew how to tackle it, and there was a sharp decline of resources. So people who were not who had COVID and weren't being able to go to the hospitals had to figure out recovery solutions at home. And food is the major part of any recovery, especially with flu kind of ailments.
Yeah.
You just need good hot food. You need clean, nutritious food. So that became a major concern because people were falling ill in clusters. Nobody at home could cook for you. Your neighbor would not be available. Your family is not available because they might be stuck in a similar situation. So I felt there was a need to connect people or volunteers, in this case, chefs, cooks, home chefs. We can call them all volunteers, to connect them with people who were ill. So people who were able to be on the ground, who were able to fulfill deliveries. The idea was to be able to just connect the dots for all of them. And that's what COVID Meals for India sort of did. I was sitting at home. It was the fourth day since the lockdown had come back in April or end of March it was. And I remember very clearly that, I cannot create content at this time because I am not just feeling it.
I understand that feeling so much.
And what will I do with more views and likes and I think I was already, that whole greed side of me, it sort of subsided because I realized that I've done a lot for myself over the last 8-10 years, but I've not really done a lot apart from my own people who work for me. Of course I do things for them, but I've not really given back to the community apart from giving them recipes and content. But there's also ulterior motive behind that for every creator, right? So I realized that I needed to use my time wisely. I had two options: either to like be somebody who's resting it out and focusing on my life for the next month and just taking care of my family, or can I add value back to the community? And I think I took the second option, which was I realized that I wanted to contribute back in some way or the other. And that's when COVID Meals for India happened, because I was getting n number of DMs, and there was a problem that was existing that had no solution to it, and I needed instant solution. So it started as a Google sheet where we assembled about 250 volunteers across 12 cities, like 12 people in each city joined that list. Then suddenly people from Instagram and Twitter started to contribute to that list. I made some other people, holders of the list as well, and people started to contribute. And then we realized, what, this requires more work and this requires more effort. So we looped in a tech company from Delhi called Faster. They were very sweet, came on board very quickly. In 3 days, they put out covidmealsforindia.com. Suddenly it was like a full platform where you could register yourself as a patient or as a service provider who can provide service no matter where you are in India. So that sort of very quickly, went viral, to say so. The list pretty much traveled all across the country on WhatsApp, on social media. And I spent about 30-35 days on that list. is the first time I felt so passionate for something the same way I used to feel for my own self as a chef, as somebody who was building something new.
Yeah.
It was also a getaway for me, in a way where, seeing so much death around you and seeing so much desperation around you can really, really put you in a different sort of mindset. So I think for me, it was like a perfect escape, to say so. I had treated it like an escape, but very, very quickly it changed into something else and it became what it did. So I think the intent was purely for the first time to help people out and help myself while doing so. And I didn't cook a single meal, by the way, while I was running COVID meals for India. So for me, it was very different because as chefs, we take pride in the fact that I cooked 200 meals today to help my community.
Yeah.
And, and that's something that it makes you feel good because you did add back to the community. But this sort of became a different journey altogether where I realized that I can use my entrepreneurial skill for the right purpose, which meant I could use my influence, I could use my followers, I could use everything that I've built to help people out in this case. As in, me being on the stove will help 10 people, 20 people, 100 people. But me being on my laptop, making calls, putting out tweets, putting out stories, was able to help lakhs of people versus helping a few people. So, great learning. I would have never thought that you can use social media for other people. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Like, I now have deep respect for the digital space, especially after COVID Meals for India, because I always knew that you can create a product like for yourself, because I had built Goila Butter Chicken, especially on Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah.
And I realized that you can also build platforms like COVID Meals for India for people. And while it might not benefit me, but I believe there's a lot of good karma there. So there is that.
And I think what was fabulous about it is that it's a true community exercise, right? It's not just like, okay, one person's done it and it's gone. It's like, one person starts it, more people kind of come into it, eventually becomes like everybody has ownership. Like you said, other people could kind of control what is going on to it, and it spread that way. And I think especially last year was a real showcase of that across the board, everyone's like kind of taking initiative and trying to find something they could be a part of to kind of help in every way. But you also used the word incredible. And when I think of you, I think incredible, I remember very clearly when I saw your MasterChef, when you went to Australia, that for me was an incredible moment to kind of visualize. Because I remember sitting at home and watching it and like, okay, that's amazing. Because you're seeing this show, which always ends up many times also doesn't showcase Indian food the way Indian food does, because I think a lot of people who go out of India cook it differently, right? And I don't think it's anybody's fault. And you've been able to do that, and you've also been able to build out restaurants outside of India as well. So I want to first ask you about the MasterChef one, but also want to talk about how you're kind of building out this now across not just India but going out of the country as well.
I think MasterChef Australia is an incredible show. We are all fans of it. As in, I grew up as a boy dreaming of being on the show myself as a contestant. And I think, like me, there are hundreds of other cooks and chefs who aspire to be on that show. I would have never in my dreams thought of being on the show as a judge. As in, when I still look back at it, sometimes you really say that you're born lucky. I feel sometimes in my journey, I feel like, luck really sided with me. But this opportunity typically was cracked by my brand manager, Kavneet. So I surround myself with some amazing people, basically, to put it out like that. So she connected the dots. Chef George was traveling to Bombay, and she told him, you should definitely try the chef's butter chicken. He is like already in Bombay. It's become like a thing. This was 2017. It was 18 months since we had launched, and George said, why not? And he said, footnote, I do not like butter chicken. Because it's that part of Indian food that he does not enjoy.
Because it's traditionally sweet, I'm gathering.
Yeah, he said, I don't like that creamy sweetness. And she said, then you should definitely try this because it's not that. He said, fine, I'll give it a try. So I took like 3 dabbas for him and his team. They all ate it out of my delivery dabbas. They didn't even wait for plates. They took rumalis in their hands and they're like mopping it up in front of me. I'm like, and then George is like, dude, you are lying to us. This is not butter chicken. What we have eaten is either that is not butter chicken or this is not butter chicken. And that's how sort of the dots connected, and we ended up doing a pop-up at his restaurant in Melbourne, and that led to appearance on MasterChef Australia. So I think sometimes you just need an opportunity to showcase what you can do, no matter which industry you are in, right? Sometimes you just need a platform to showcase yourself. And a lot of the food community feels that a butter chicken is not a true representative of Indian food only. It's the same stereotypical old school classic that we are still harping on, which is a truth, which means India cannot be represented by just butter chicken or one dish, to say so. But the fact is, because it's so popular globally, if you hit it at its heart, which means you change their perception about butter chicken, suddenly it opens a universe to the idea of, oh my God, if this is what butter chicken could be, let's see what a ghee roast tastes like, or let's see what a chettinad tastes like. Let's see what, a khasi curry in Meghalaya tastes like. So suddenly it opens the world to what Indian food could actually hold. And why are we so popular? Because there's detailing in the recipe, there are spices. And I went onto the show, they said, please do not hide the recipe. Give it to us as it is. So it turned out to be a 4.5-page recipe.
Wow.
It's the longest recipe I've ever written in my life, because my own outlet recipe is 1.5 page. But this was like a 4.5-page recipe. And I was like, these contestants are going to be like, we have 120 minutes to read this or to cook this. It was long. And it was an amazing moment, because I got to represent India on sort of a global platform. For me, it was a dream come true, absolutely, because somebody who's traveled the length and breadth of the country, and I've always taken pride in representing Indian food outside. It became that moment where I could sort of speak about how valuable Indian food is across the globe to sort of global press. And that opened doors for GBC in different directions. Before that, our ambition was to, be a pan-India brand. And suddenly we realized that we did not want to be a pan-India brand. We changed our company's direction from scaling up within India to actually scaling across the globe. And then the pandemic hit us, unfortunately. But before that, only we had shook hands with our current master franchise in UK, who had agreed to take Goila Butter Chicken to UK. And we launched our first cloud kitchen in London in 2020 in the pandemic. I have never been to my London store.
What are you saying?
I have never tasted food of Goila Butter Chicken in UK myself. But that's the beauty of, I think, today's world. You can teach anything virtually to people, because you have technology is such that there are multiple ways of figuring these things out. However, yes, as a chef, you can never be truly satisfied until you have tasted your own food that is being served at a store in a foreign country. But we were able to pull that off in the pandemic. And recently, a month back, we opened our first physical store in London as well, in Fitzrovia, which is like a 12-seater Goila Butter Chicken in the heart of the city. It's one of the most happening streets in London. And to even know that we have a 10-12-seater store there is 100% a matter of pride, because we started from like 200 square feet kitchen in Andheri. And till date, we are self-funded. We have all the money that the company has earned gets reinvested into the brand. So we've not raised any external capital, apart from, of course, raising loans and etc. But it is sort of a matter of pride, because it's classic way of doing business. Might not be the best growth strategy for any brand in today's day and age, because brands require scale fast to survive the pressure of PR and the way the machinery works. But for us, it has played out well. And I think we hope to scale to different parts of UK by the end of this year. And we also are looking at 2 other countries to take Goila Butter Chicken within this year as well. So for us, it's looking more of a global domination scenes versus just in India.
What I think is also exciting about that is you're taking, we've always had franchise models kind of come from outside the country into India. Like you've had everything from pizzas to burgers to kind of go. You've not had a global push out on this front. I think that's super exciting. If I was an entrepreneur today in the food space, if I'm a chef who wants to kind of build out their business, or someone who's just interested in the food space, what are you seeing as, if you look at just trends from the future, like what you're seeing as, okay, this is something I need to keep in mind if I'm building in this market, especially after what's happened over the last couple of years? What would those things be?
I think real estate for sure. I would not invest or open myself a space that will ask for a lot of investment in real estate. The idea is to keep the model capex light, because situation is very volatile. You don't know how the pandemic shapes up. There could be a best and worst case scenario, and you don't want to be stuck in the worst case scenario, because unlike putting out a auto manufacturing plant where cars can still get manufactured, you get stuck as a hospitality restaurateur. You can't send people, they can't make food, they can't send food, like it's perishable goods. So I would keep any model that we venture out into capex light, of course, unless you have a pot of gold sitting with you. Best time to take over struggling or dying restaurants, unfortunately, because that's what the market is currently. But yeah, I would keep in mind that the world has gotten used to sitting at home. Yes, there's a lot of revenge dining, and we're all going out a lot right now. But habit formation has already happened.
Yeah.
Work from home is going to be a permanent scenario for some people, and sort of a flexible scenario for most corporate companies in the world, which means people are going to stay at home a lot. They're going to eat at home a lot. They might not cook at home a lot. And hence, the ready to cook space, the ready to eat space, the cloud kitchen space are the industries that are going to grow immensely in the next 10 years. And that's where the food industry is heading from the larger perspective. However, of course, if you are a specialist and you have something new to offer to the world, and you're a chef who believes in his art, and you have something special to show, there will always be space for boutique restaurants or luxury F&B spots where people will want to go out and celebrate or to experience something that's special. But that segment is reducing down. It is dropping down to a large extent, because restaurants are also now banking on the cloud kitchen space for at least 20-30% of the revenue. Earlier, it used to be 5, 7, 10% restaurants would expect from delivery. Now they hope for a 30 to 35% of revenue from delivery, which means it's only a matter of time it's going to become 50-50.
Yeah.
Even for fine dining restaurants, where they will, apart from, as I said, a handful few who are like top restaurants of the country or of the city, there will always be space for that. But I think the future looks very, very dark kitchen, cloud kitchen focus for sure, at least the next 10 years. And restaurants, people who are opening, like I would see them or envision them opening more boutique style, more sort of specialty driven restaurants versus opening like bulk and big restaurants that used to be the flavor of restaurant world earlier. I think it's going to become more, again, more specialized and more focused. For instance, somebody will only open a pizzeria, or somebody will only open a specialty coffee place, or so it's going to move into that direction. Restaurants that will curate or cater to a special need, to say so, and those are the restaurants that will survive in the future for sure.
I was actually going to ask you one of my questions I had, but you answered it through this conversation. So I'm not going to ask you, was to ask if I'm a content creator who wants to do stuff around food, but you answered that a lot. So I'm going to jump into that. What I'm actually going to jump into is the last segment of the show, where I ask my guests a set of random questions which have nothing to do with what we spoke about so far. What do you spend a lot of time doing outside of being a content creator, being an entrepreneur, being a chef? What excites you to spend your time doing, if there is any time left?
I love traveling. It's my like sort of go-to thing. I sometimes randomly pack my bag, book my ticket on the spot, and I just leave. So for me, travel is my sort of my best friend in that sense. I love to travel. And when I'm not traveling and I'm sitting at home, I think I consume a lot of content, which means, but I like to watch cinema. So I'm into like watching foreign films and then, appreciating global cinema. One of the investments that I always do when I'm at home or I shift my home is to have like a big projector, big screen, great audio in my home, because I'm sort of an audiophile like that. I love listening to good sound, and I think that's what I spend a lot of my time on as a hobby. Big sort of Blu-ray collection and all of that. So I spend my time on that and travel. I think those are the two things that I do a lot. For downtime, I have two cats. I just like randomly play with them. It's what I do. But yeah, I don't spend a lot of time with food at home because I'm surrounded with food all the time.
Yeah.
Is the peril of making your passion your profession. You don't like to do that at home, which was once the case earlier.
Which means I have to ask you this question: what is your go-to basic dish at home if you have to put something together?
If I have to put something together, it will be eggs because they're the fastest. And if somebody else has to put something for me, my favorite cuisine is Sindhi food. So I usually tell them to make a nice Sindhi curry or matar wale chawal for me. Or I would push them to cook Sindhi food for me, basically.
Nice. Anything that you watched recently that you'd recommend? Watched, read, listened to anything which you'd recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I recently saw this show. It's called on Netflix called The Witcher. I absolutely loved it. The production is insanely good. Henry Cavill is 100 times better there than being Superman, and it sort of pushes you into a different world, and it takes you away from where you are in your life. So it transports you into a different realm altogether. So it's a personal favorite. And Ted Lasso. Oh my God, what a show! It just makes you happy and gives you hope. So
totally does.
Yeah. So those two.
What kind of an actor did young Saransh Goila want to be when he wanted to be an actor?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I always feel like I would do very, very well in TV shows, like playing a character in your daily life. I think I have what it takes to play that mundane character who loses his shit every now and then and do drama.
Still waiting to happen. I think it's still waiting to happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, maybe someday when GVC finds its true calling and I'm not needed here anymore, I'll probably be an actor over being a chef. Maybe, you never know. Life is full of surprises.
What can you put together in an instant, which can't be eggs? I asked you that specifically so that you won't say the easiest dish for you, but what can you put together in an instant?
I think a salad. I am like a walking, talking sort of directory of salad dressings. I can make a new salad every day of the year. Like I like if I told you that from day one to day 365, I can make a new salad dressing every day because my mind sort of keeps churning recipes while I speak. So yeah, a new salad dressing every day, which will make a new salad.
And the last question, which I normally take a lot of time trying to figure out how to use this, because I try to make do a take on the name of the show. Why will our love for butter chicken not die?
Oh, that's a great. I think our love for butter chicken will never die because see, you already mentioned it's a hug in a bowl. It's comforting. It comes to hug you when you cry, and that's why it will not die. And also rhyme it, but no, I think tomatoes, are the most umami-driven vegetables on the planet. There's a reason we like pasta. There's a reason we like butter chicken. It's tomatoes. When you pack good, juicy tomatoes into a concentrate, tomato ketchup, the most loved condiment that you can have with anything on the side, because it makes you feel good. It makes you feel satisfied. It's because tomatoes have umami. In fact, one of my favorite dishes on Chef Gagan Anand's menu is like one of the topmost Indian chefs in the world in his restaurant in Gagan in Bangkok used to be a tomato matcha soup. So he would concentrate a whole load of tomatoes into this small little bowl in front of you. And he would add like tomato dust and like concentrated tomato powder on it. And once you sip onto it, it really makes you it really makes you feel good. It's comforting. You feel satisfied. That human tendency to feel satisfied after a meal. And I think that's what butter chicken can do. It's that satisfaction that comes from that creamy tomato base that really will make sure that the butter chicken never dies for anyone.
You have ensured that at the end of this conversation, I am at the back of my head considering all the stuff I have to order for dinner. I'm definitely not eating home food today, वो तो होने वाला नहीं. But you have ensured that I'm ordering tonight. But thanks again for doing this. This has been fabulous. I've been super fun for me. I hope it was fun for you as well. And thanks for coming on Advertising is Dead.
No, absolutely. And I must say, Varun, you are a very keen listener. I love the way that you are so like, it almost feels like that I should speak more because you're listening so keenly. So thank you for making it easy.
Perfect. A podcaster's job is done when I feel like my guest has felt like I've listened. But I was also listening so much. I think it's your not just your journey, but your insights are super useful for people to kind of use. I'm still going back to the one you said about focus. I think that's such a core part that you spoke about, and I feel most people don't give that enough focus. But thanks, tons of great insights here for people to listen to.
Cheers. Now we'll meet up over some butter chicken. Bye.
Done. We'll do that.
If you like this podcast and you want to listen to more podcasts like this, head over to the IVM Podcast website or app or wherever you get your podcast from and look at all the podcasts that IVM makes. There's some really fun stuff there.
Hello. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On The Habit Coach, Ashton meets Dr. John DeMartini. He is a world-renowned human behavior expert and founder of the DeMartini Institute. He shares 5 actionable habits to align our purpose and values. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita discuss Disney Plus Hotstar's swelling subscription numbers and actor Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's new alcohol brand, Teremana Tequila. On All Things Policy, the Takshashila folk take a close look at the union government banning another 54 Chinese apps. On Smarter with Sid, Siddharth explores how Shark Tank India is changing the equation of the startup economy. And on Tere Mere Raste, Keshav takes us to Bhutan's royal capital, Thimphu. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. It really helps us. Don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms that you're listening to. And also remember, you can check us out on YouTube at www.ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, SBI Life Insurance, Bank of Baroda, and HDFC Life Insurance. Thank you so much for making this possible.
इन्फ्लेशन, फिस्कल डेफिसिट, जीडीपी, एमएसपी, एनपीए, इक्विटी मार्केट वगैरह वगैरह। दोस्तों, हमने सारे शब्द टीवी या अखबार में जरूर देखे होंगे या फिर सुने होंगे, पर हम में से कितने लोग हैं जो ये जानते हैं कि इन सब का सीधा प्रभाव पड़ता है हमारी सैलरी पर, हमारे इंक्रीमेंट पर और कमबख्त हमारे खर्चों पर। दोस्तों, मेरा नाम है अभिनव त्रिवेदी और मैं बात कर रहा हूँ इक्का दुक्का इकोनॉमी पॉडकास्ट से, जहाँ पे इस तरह के इकोनॉमिक और फाइनेंशियल टर्म्स को मैं जोड़ूंगा सीधा आपकी जेब से। हर मंगलवार एक नया एपिसोड सुने IVM पॉडकास्ट की वेबसाइट, ऐप या फिर किसी भी अन्य पॉडकास्ट प्लेटफॉर्म पर।